Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and it's kind of hard to believe, but we're already to the Olympic break in the WNBA, or we will be here coming up this week. It's something that'll start here in mid-July, run through August, so we'll get about a month off. We will have the All-Star break or All-Star game coming up here in July before the Olympic break officially begins. But it's a weird time in the WNBA where everything just kind of gets on or puts on pause for about a month as we head over to Paris and focus on the Olympics, which a good amount of WNBA players are participating in. For the Minnesota Lynx specifically, Nafisa Collier will be playing for the United States. Bridget Carleton will be playing in Canada. Alana Smith will be playing with Australia. Cheryl Reeve will be leading the USA team once again this year. So it'll be an interesting thing from a Minnesota Lynx perspective. Interesting, tournament to kind of tune into and watch, as well as just for the WNBA players in general and the other talent that is over in Paris this year. But with that said, before we get to that point, I am really thrilled to be joined by a guest this week to kind of look back on the first half of the year, kind of a little over first half of the year, but the first portion of the year now that we head into the break. Mark Schindler, who is phenomenal covering basketball, women's basketball. He kind of covers it at all levels, does a little bit of everything, has his hands in just about everything, and does a phenomenal job with all of that in providing all of that coverage. So Mark is great. I always enjoyed talking with Mark. I had him on last year on the podcast one time, and he's always been somebody I've wanted to circle back and touch base with and catch back up with and have on the podcast again. So I really appreciate him joining. A lot of great insight that he provides. We kind of take a look at the league. We talk about the Minnesota Lynx, and we talk about the rest of the year and kind of make our predictions on what might take place here the rest of the year, not only with who might come out on top as league champions, but we also dive into the individual awards as well. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with Mark Schindler. Mark, how are you doing, man?
Mitchell, I'm really good, dude. I'm psyched to be here. It's been a fun season, especially on your end with the Lynx, but just in general, it's been a blast. But how's everything for you?
Everything's going well. I appreciate it. It's I think last year when I don't remember, I think it was around this same time we had talked. You joined the podcast last year, and we kind of talked about things at the midway point in the season. I think it was that, or maybe it was towards the end of the season. But it's been a while, so I wanted to get you back on and catch back up with you. It's been a while, so I appreciate you joining the
No,
podcast.
definitely.
Well, cool. Well, let's jump right into things. The first thing I wanted to kind of ask was a little bit of an overarching question of kind of what your thoughts are on the season so far, what we've seen so far. We're a little ways over the halfway point, but now we're approaching that Olympic break. And what are your thoughts so far early on?
Yeah, I think for me, obviously to me, I think that there are I would say 5.5 teams that really, technically six, but I think there are really six teams that
Mhm.
could all vie for a spot in the title this year. Not that I think they'll win it, but um, I think what I'm most interested by is this is going to be my first year fully invested with, that I've been in with an Olympic break.
Mhm.
And I know just from I was working on a story, still kind of in the works of finishing it, but on the 2012 Fever, and that was the team that they were roughly 500 around the time the Olympic break hit, and they came back, played the best basketball they did, and went on to go win a title. And I think part of what's going to be so interesting about this year is there's just so much kind of up in the air with
Mhm.
that I don't know what to take from it. So I think that's what makes it fun, because there's just I don't want to say the field is wide open. I think there's some teams that have clearly separated themselves, but there's been a lot of inner competition between the top of the top. Some teams match up really well against others, but not as well against one or two. And it's been really interesting to watch that play out. So I think I'm just most interested to see kind of what this looks like down the backstretch once everybody gets back from the Olympic break.
Yeah, I mean, it's to your point. It's interesting where, I mean, you could have teams that are, let's say the Lynx, for example. I'm not saying this would happen, but they could come out of the Olympic break and completely drop off and just completely flip the script of what took place during the first, quote unquote, first half. Or you could have teams that are, on the other end of the spectrum. Let's say it could be beneficial for like the rookies. Let's say Caitlin Clark, she has a month off to kind of get in the gym a little bit more, kind of get, I don't know, just kind of work on a few things, and she could come up and or come back and take her game to the next level. It's really intriguing that, I mean, it's very similar. I mean, the NHL, I guess, has it with their Olympic break during their season occasionally. It's weird, but it's also kind of nice at the same time. It just kind of puts things on pause, and then you can kind of basically start a new season after a month. It's kind of strange, but
Well, I mean, exactly like you're saying, part of what's going to be so interesting is like, okay, how does this kind of end up playing out? Because a team like the Sun, they have
hmm
one player playing in the Olympics, I believe. Like it's just going to be Alyssa Thomas.
hmm
Whereas you look at the Liberty, who are currently leading the league, the first team to 20 wins, they have pretty much everybody, including the bench, is playing in the Olympics. Same thing with
right.
the Aces. They have four, all the the core four are all going to be playing in the Olympics. They have um, players down roster that are going to be playing in the Olympics. And like, granted, like this is stuff you bake in that happens, but exactly what you're talking about. Like, okay, what if there is a team that is really able to utilize having some people in markets still? And I think, kind of like you alluded to, a team like Indiana, maybe Chicago, is a team that could really benefit from having that time off to kind of just figure
hmm
out what's what, correct some of what has or hasn't worked the last couple weeks, and ride that into the close of the year.
hmm It is also, it's kind of what you talked about with, the amount of players from each team too. Obviously, from a team's perspective, it's great seeing their players play in the Olympics. I'm sure they love that. They build relationships. They do all of that kind of behind the scenes stuff. And they're still on the court. They're still playing. Obviously, you risk injury, but also, like you said, it's kind of that fatigue factor, or are they going to come back into the second half of the season not as, kind of rested and ready to go as the other players? So it's kind of a, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing, or it's kind of a positive and a negative at the same time. But that's another thing that, not just, Olympics aside, we were talking about the first half and the second half of the season. That's a whole other curveball that you have to throw into the or factor you have to throw into the mix too, with the players that are playing, and hopefully, knock on wood, they don't get hurt. Hopefully they're not, too worn out or too fatigued when they do get back, and hopefully that doesn't impact the product on the floor in the W. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It's also just weird from a covering perspective of just your all right after July 17th or mid-July, whatever it is, whenever the break starts. It's just all of a sudden just hard stop. Like the season is just
Yeah.
halt. I know the content, like all the stories and stuff don't necessarily stop in following women's basketball with the Olympics and stuff, but it's just weird going on a month break and just kind of pausing what's taking place. But it allows
Yeah.
the media to kind of rest up too, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly like you're saying. That's what's so weird. Like it's not just, okay, here's a week and a half, 2 weeks.
hmm
No, dude, like it's an entire month. And there's only like I mean, Olympic basketball, luckily, that's one of the sports that'll go for the majority of the Olympics, but even then there'll be like a week or so off. Like there's some time in between the All-Star game happening and then, when the Olympics actually start up. So it's going to be fascinating. I personally am not going to complain because I have a bunch of basketball I need to catch up on. Like
Yeah.
with just international stuff, like U20 is finishing up, I think today. Today slash, yeah, no, it's today. U17 just started yesterday for Worlds. So like I need to stay on top of all that. And, so I'm kind of blessed to have some of the
Yeah.
time off. But yeah, man, it's a lot of stuff going down this
Yeah.
summer.
The grind doesn't stop. Grind doesn't
Correct.
stop. Kind of feeding off of what I asked before with like the early season thoughts. Are there any, maybe one or two of each, or any surprises, or kind of surprises on both ends, either positive surprises or negative surprises that you've seen from teams or players or whatever it may be?
Surprises, surprises. I think I don't want to say that the Lynx are surprised. Like I felt pretty clearly going into the year, and I said it publicly. I was like, I think this team is going to be a top five team in the league. I think,
hmm
they added too much in the offseason. Cheryl and this staff are too good. And you have Fee, who became a top five player in the league last year. Like I think I was just too certain on what that formula was going to be. I would say the surprise to me has been them having the best defense in the league,
Yeah, I
after,
agree.
as we watched what they were last year. So watching them put this together has been really fun. And also just something that I feel like you can bank on getting from them every game, other
hmm
than, last game that was rough. But There's just, I mean, that's part of the difficulty of playing 40 games when that's what the fourth time they've played Seattle already this year, and
Yep.
they don't have feet. It happens.
Yeah.
But point being, like, I think this team, I wouldn't even say has been a surprise. I will say, like, if there was a quote unquote surprise, it would be Bridget Carleton.
hmm
Um,
I agree
I
with that.
think I was like going to be really interested. Not that Bridget can't play, but like I was
Right.
just going to be really interested to see, okay, Diamond's out for an extended period. How do you kind of fill that fifth starter spot? And I mean, Bridget has blossomed into having the best season of her career.
hmm
Clearly is in even better shape than she's been in prior, has been arguably one of the best shooters in the league. Has done a lot defensively that kind of goes unnoticed and just fits in really well to doing what this team wants to do. And um, I think if you don't get this season from Bridget Carleton, they probably have two or three less wins, and they're closer to 500 than being a team that has, jostled with being a top two team in the league. So, if that was a surprise, I think I would throw that out. It's definitely, I wasn't expecting this kind of season from her, and it's been cool to see that happen. Um, Other surprise, I think I would say in maybe a more negative light, the Phoenix Mercury.
hmm
On one hand, totally understand that injuries play a part and are an unfortunate aspect from the game. They have looked better since Brittany Griner's been like fully healthy, and even then she still had to miss some games. But like, I think you see how little margin for error this team has with having players miss time. Like obviously every team deals with that to a degree, but I just think this team is too talented and put in too much to be 12 and 11 right now.
hmm
Obviously, what they're doing is about building up towards the postseason. Right now, I mean, they're down 12 to Connecticut. It looks like this is probably going to put them down to 12 and 12. I think they have the pieces to be really interesting, and they've shown really great flashes of play. It just hasn't been there consistently. And I don't really, so I don't know. I think for me, I was expecting this team to be a little bit better, especially in some areas like they have been just. Somebody asked me about this today, and I said it on Twitter. I was like, there are areas where they have been poor, but the rebounding has just been like abysmal from them. And
hmm
I get that they're playing smaller, but it's been to a level where like, I mean, DeJounte Carrington looks like Rebecca Brunson today in that first half. I think she had three offensive rebounds in the first half. And granted, she's been really good crashing the glass all year, but that's on the scout. You know that's
hmm
there. You got to be able to take that away. And so I don't know. They're a team, especially with how well Kalia Copper is playing.
Yeah.
It is like I want to see them perform at a higher level, but a lot of season left to see what happens with that still.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. I would also maybe throw on the negative side of things, and I
Atlanta.
know Dallas
Oh,
has
Dallas
been
too. Yeah.
well, Indiana, and I mean Indiana has actually I was more surprised with how I wasn't surprised with how slow they started. And I'm also surprised with how they've picked things up so quickly. Like it's kind of a back and like I don't know. I kind of expected them to just kind of be steady, the whole way. But I mean, the fact that they're seventh in the standings, I think is a huge success already. But I would almost say, Dallas, and I know with injuries that obviously plays a huge factor, but I mean, you're missing two of your key pieces, or at least were until Natasha Howard came back, missing two huge key pieces in the post. I mean, that's nothing to overlook. But I mean, the fact that they're at the bottom of the standings, it's kind of surprising to me. Um, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's obviously plenty of season left, but it's getting away from us fast here. It's kind of running out of time here. But
Well, I
um,
mean, not to even like extend it too long, but I mean, you're totally right. I think they were bringing it up on WNBA Countdown today, and like, oh well, maybe Dallas is a team where when Satu comes back healthy after the Olympic break, maybe they can make a run. I'm like, dude, they are like 12 games
mhm,
back from being in the well, not in the playoffs, but like to be comfortably in the playoffs, like to not
right.
be in that eighth spot. And I think I don't want to put blame on anybody, but it's just tough because I think like yes, they've had injuries, but they've also regressed in a lot of the ways that they were good
Mhm,
last year. Like this was a solid defensive team last season. And I mean, Satu plays a big part of that. She's a very good defender, was a crucial part of what they did. But I mean, they're the worst defensive team in the league by defensive rating right now,
mhm,
and it bears out in watching as well. So I think that's been really disparaging. I'm hopeful that they continue to improve from there, but it hasn't been great. There's not a lot of stuff that you feel good about watching them.
mhm.
It's been it's been tough sledding. I hope that they're able to kind of get smooth with some of the injuries. I know Natasha Howard, unfortunately, looked like she picked up another injury again the other day, which just sucks because she was
Yeah.
playing really well when she was healthy.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, because again, like you even talk about a team like Atlanta, who is 7-15, doesn't own their own draft pick this year.
Yeah.
Like they cannot afford to drop games. They're 12 games back from the first spot overall, which again, they're not going to get up there. But
Hmm.
again, in terms of like being in that Phoenix spot in six, that's 5.5 games, 4.5 games.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
they have not, I mean, they have missed Ryan Howard, to be fair, but like they've been pretty solid without injuries this year, other than Jordan Canada. Like
Mhm.
they've had everybody else. It's it's a little it's a
Yeah.
little spooky how this
Yeah.
year is going for them. I'm
I
hopeful that
agree.
they can kind of figure some things out, and I think they will. Like I think, just having Ryan back and healthy after the Olympic break will be really good for them because she's their best player and she's really important, but they should be better than they've looked.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot to dig into with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going back to, and we'll touch on this in a little bit too, but going back to the Lynx thing that you were talking about too, like I agree with you. I said that too right away after the free agency period that, this was maybe a top 4 or 5 team in the WNBA. Depending on how fast they get acclimated and kind of gel together. I did not expect them to start as well as they did so fast. Like, and I know that Cheryl Rivas talked about this even right out of training camp. She's like, we just had a phenomenal training camp and everything just clicked right away. And that's credit to the players and the coaching staff and obviously getting them prepared and everything. But I didn't expect them to start the way they have. Now, if you would have told me at this point of the year they're a top 5 team or they're floating around, they've been top 3 all season long, I would probably, maybe believe you, but expected it to be kind of the exact opposite of what's taking place where they start a little bit slower and then they pick things up. But it's almost been the complete opposite, and it's been impressive. But it hopefully we'll see. Like we said, we'll see what happens after the break and what teams are able to pull through or do after they return. Um, Kind of going off to well, let's just dive right into the Lynx. We kind of touched on them a little bit, but what are your thoughts on not only I mean, you talked about Nafisa Collier continuing to do what she does. I mean, hopefully she can get back onto the court here soon and get back to being fully healthy. But what are your thoughts on what they've been able to do? Obviously, they're a great defensive team. They've improved 3-point wise, and the new pieces are fitting in, very well. They look like a team that's played together for a year plus already. But what are your thoughts on what's taken place so far in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, just the defensive turnaround has been immense, and I think it's interesting because I was asked about this the other day, and I think that nothing's set in stone, but like if I had to give out a vote today, I think Alana Smith would be my defensive player of the year. She's been that good. Like obviously Fee is incredible. I think the counting stats are phenomenal, and she does a ton of stuff with just creating events. As she's
Hmm.
been just an absolute menace on and off the ball, all areas of the court. But to me, like I think Atlanta is who has truly unlocked this group to be what they have been. Cheryl talked about it a ton before the year. Like they just didn't have rim protection last year. They didn't have somebody who they could trust on the back line. Um, and I knew Atlanta was going to bring that as somebody who could really block shots, be mobile, alter things. Um, but she's done such a good job guarding up
Hmm.
on the bigger fives in the league too, and giving this team a real puncher's chance in some of the matchups that I was maybe worried about them with. Like even like this team has been so competitive with New York because Alana Smith has been incredible guarding Jonquel
Hmm.
Jones and also making her work on the other end. So to me, like I look up and down at what this has been and like the way that this group has been so locked in together on that end has been really impressive. But then it's interesting because the team is seventh in offensive rating now, but in watching, they just feel better than that.
Yeah.
Um, they're currently, if it still holds up from over the weekend, they're on pace to have the highest assist rate in WNBA history. Like they move the ball incredibly well. Everything that they do is drive and kick. Like they're so
Hmm.
good at just putting the defense in rotation and keeping the ball moving. And I think, like obviously, Fee's incredible. You have this season from K-Mac, which there's more to talk about with that, obviously. But I think it stood out in the way that the role players have been able to kind of continue things. Like Cecilia Zandalicini has had her box score is nothing insane, but like she's had some of the most important stretches from a player that you can talk about on the team in terms of what she's been able to do in some random crunch time games. Like Olivia Pupa hasn't played as much the last couple of weeks, but like you have games middle of that early stretch where it's like, hey, we need a changeup. We need somebody who can really pressure the ball and who can really get into the teeth of defense and move things. And she comes in and plays big minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have it feels like every player on this team has like an understanding of what they do best and is able to stick to that and not really play outside themselves, but also be a better version of themselves playing on this team. And I think that's what stands out to me most. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a very cohesive basketball team.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, and the amount of depth that this team has too. I mean, you just touched on it. It can be anybody, especially coming off the bench, be anybody at any given night. Natisha Heidemann, you could throw her into that. She has stepped up in different periods too. But like you look at the injuries too, and how those players have from the second unit have just stepped in without even a blink of an eye. I mean, Dorka Juhas is once again playing great off the bench, and when she gets inserted into the starting lineup, I mean, you mentioned already talked about Bridget Carlton, who I think has locked up a starting job for the rest of the year, no matter what, just because
Agreed.
she's playing unbelievable. But that to your point, like that is the amount of depth and the amount of like power that they have from anybody on the court is something they've never really had before. And that's something Cheryl Reeve talked about at the end of last year that, it was they had a two-headed monster. They had Nafisa Collier and Kale McBride, and no one else really stepped up. And now they have 6, 7, 8 players that can come in and step up at any given time. But it's and that's a credit to also, or that has kind of, I think, been a result of the overall team defense, the overall, the cohesiveness and all of that stuff. And like you said, everybody just understands what their job is. I always think back to NFL and Bill Belichick always saying, "Do your job," and that's exactly what Cheryl Reeve says too. It's everybody plays their role, and you got to understand your role. And everybody I think for the first time with this team that I've really been around, maybe since obviously since the dynasty era, they understand their role and they're fine with that. They don't have any personalities that put me before we, and that's been a result of them starting fast, or that has resulted in them starting fast. But Alana Smith too, you mentioned her. I mean, she to me she reminds me a lot of what Jess Shepard was early on when Jess Shepard was healthy, come in, do all the little things. But Lana Smith is a lot better defensively. You talk about defensively with her deflections and just her being active in the paint. And I mean, every night she has 2, 3 blocks. It seems like she's just been outstanding, and that's something that always gets overlooked. I mean, you look at the dynasty era for the Lynx, or Rebecca Brunson was that player, but no one really shined a light on her like maybe they should have, just because it's something that isn't so flashy and I was isn't something that people key in on. But yeah, it's been amazing. I didn't think that the offseason additions, I mentioned this before, I didn't think they would come in and fit as well as they did, as fast as they did. But that's just a credit to the personalities and the personnel that they did bring in. But when it comes to the Lynx, do you view them as, I know they're obviously a top 3 team, as they kind of have been all year long. Do you view them as maybe, kind of pushing towards that top tier and maybe being a contender, or are they still kind of firmly in that second tier, maybe even third tier? What do you think of
No, I
where
think they're
they're at?
absolutely a contender right now.
Mhm.
Like obviously this stretch with Fee out has hurt them, and I think, you see what like yeah, not having a one of the very best players in the sport is extremely impactful. But um no, I think this is absolutely a team that can win a championship this year or at least compete for it. Um a lot's going to be like I do think they're a team. I'll be fascinated. Like I'm excited to watch them match up with Connecticut again
Mhm.
whenever that happens because I do think that is kind of the one team where I'm like, all right, they do struggle with them a little bit.
Yep.
Connecticut's just so good at using their size and being able to kind of hunt mismatches out and take advantage of some of those things.
Mhm.
And for a team that does trend a little bit smaller at every position, that can be difficult. But I think when you think about what this team can do in a playoff setting over 5 games, like I don't know, like there are very few teams I would pick over them. Even with that loss to Seattle, I think with what we've seen this year, I would have Minnesota ahead of them.
Mhm.
Obviously, a lot can change, things can get different, but Yeah, if Fee is healthy, I think this team's I would project them to make the conference finals at the least and kind
Mhm.
of see what happens from there.
Yeah, and when going back to like the depth piece too, that is something that plays such a big role in the playoffs too, and that's something that especially when injuries pop up, like have happened throughout, for every team in this year so far, but specifically with Minnesota, they've stepped up, and that's something that is very very important moving into the playoffs, and as well as kind of the veteran leadership that they brought in too. But yeah, it's weird. Like I didn't expect this big of a, well, it kind of did, but didn't really expect this big of a jump to where we were, talking about them as a fringe playoff team last year, or, the last 2 years basically. And now all of a sudden it's, oh, we're back to the Minnesota Lynx that we all knew and loved. But it's been fun, that's for dang sure. When
No,
it
absolutely.
when it comes to the kind of prediction side of things, I know we're at the midway point or a little after the midway point, but who do you think is kind of that front runner right now for potentially winning or kind of the title favorite front runner right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bet against the Las Vegas Aces
Yeah,
until they lose the championship.
right.
Like, I just, I think even with Chelsea Gray clearly not 100% yet, they're, I think, 8-1, probably going to go to 9-1 today,
Hmm.
with her back in the starting lineup. And or it's not the starting lineup, just being back in general. Um, I think when you see her back, like you see, it's less about like how she has or hasn't played. It's more like, okay, well, you see Kelsey Plum slot back into being more naturally an off guard. You see Jackie Young be able to do even more with the ball in her hands, but being able to reel that in a little bit to where it's now like it's an added benefit instead of something we have to have every game. And you see how much more easily Asia Wilson gets the ball in some
Hmm.
half court scenarios. The defense hits harder because the offense is a little bit more composed, and Chelsea is a really solid defender. Does a lot of things for them communication wise. And then I think the depth is just different for them this year. Like
Yeah.
this is the deepest they've been, having Tiffany Hayes. Kia Stokes gets to slot back in more naturally. You have Alicia Clark. Like that's the best top eight in the league.
Hmm.
You can't really compete with that. I mean, you can compete with it, but like you know what I mean. Like it's just
Yeah.
they're on their own plane until it gets proven otherwise that they
Hmm.
aren't. And I think any sort of issues that people had early on in the year with them were overwrought. Like this was clearly a team that had the talent, had the people to do it. Like, and now we're just kind of seeing that all come together. Asia Wilson is the best player in the game,
Yeah.
like without a doubt.
Hmm.
I just don't even think it's debatable with how she's played this year. And to me too, like that is, man, I don't know what you do with her at this level with the rest of the talent around her. But
Yeah.
that's what's so exciting about the league, man. I feel like there's a lot of just kind of stuff up in the air that we can, find out and see what's happening as the
Hmm.
year goes on. And I'm fascinated by it. Part of the fun stuff of having a team that's so dominant and so talented and good is that they push things. And I
Right.
think you can think about what this Lynx team did when they were the dynasty team and how it kind of pushed the rest of the league.
Hmm.
Obviously, a lot of the same stuff can be said about the Aces and what they're doing now. And I'm just fascinated to watch it continue to play out.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of already talked about who you vote for MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Um, do you have any predictions on let's go with like six Player of the Year or Coach of the Year? Who would win those two yet or as of right now?
Sixth player of the year. Ooh,
That
let
one's
me
a little
think on
tougher
sixth player of the year. Sixth player
because
of the year is tough.
it is because I initially I would say you know Kennedy. Wow, man,
I
I
think Kennedy's probably played enough games as a
She had,
starter
yeah.
now.
That's where it's tough because if she was in her role that she started the year at,
Or
yeah,
she meets the criteria right now, but she's about to pass it because
okay.
she had 12 games off the bench. But yeah, I mean, she'll be past that very quickly.
I've been
Um,
surprised with Tammy Benley from Indiana. I mean, I she was in
yeah.
Minnesota for a little while, and her game has evolved, a lot more than what she was, earlier in her career in Minnesota. But she's been a nice piece for them coming off the bench this year and stepped up in key moments. Um, I don't know. Sixth player of the year is always a tough one for me. It's one of those that I mean, you could throw three names out there, and you can make a case for all three of them or whatever. But and it's tough too with a situation like Carter, where she's kind of fluctuating back and forth. And do you think that when for Coach of the Year, do you have a front runner for that? I personally would. I'm a little biased, but I'd say probably Cheryl Reeve at this point. But do you have any votes for that, or any thoughts on that? I guess.
Yeah, I think right now it would probably be Cheryl for me. It'd be
Hmm.
Cheryl or Sandy.
Yeah.
Just kind of the way that things have come together.
Hmm.
Uh, Especially with how well New York has played
Yeah.
against the top teams. Because like I think Stephanie White's incredible. I believe she deserved it last year. There were multiple people
Hmm.
who were, willing, who I would have been fine with winning, but like I just think, Connecticut struggling against top teams, it always factors in. I think,
Yeah.
how well you play against top teams should factor in. But like, yeah, I mean, I believe I would probably vote for Sandy right now because just
Yeah.
typically I like the last 2 years, I voted Becky. Like, I think if
Hmm.
you are able to push your team to that level, yes, part of it is having the players, but also we saw that team with a lot of the same players and
Hmm.
different coaching staff and work as well. So like it would be between Sandy or Cheryl for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. Definitely agree with that. Well, cool. Well, I really appreciate you jumping on and joining the podcast, talking a little hoops. And it's always a blast, as I mentioned. It's always a blast talking basketball with you and just catching up with you. So I appreciate you joining, Mark, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Likewise, man.
All
Appreciate
right.
you.
Thank you once again to Mark for joining the podcast this week. As I mentioned before, we started recording that podcast. I really appreciate Mark and all he does for the women's game, all the coverage that he provides. We're lucky to have someone like him, among others, covering this game, this league, and providing his great knowledge and insight. He's phenomenal and does a really great job. And he's somebody I really enjoy talking hoops with. Somebody that I could listen to kind of take a deep dive on teams if we had more time to allow that. We could have easily jumped into each team and kind of broke all of them down. But Mark is phenomenal. And once again, want to thank him for taking some time to join the Hitting the Hardwood podcast. Before we get into our sponsors, I want to mention where you can find a lot of the Hitting the Hardwood content. You can sign up, first of all, for our newsletter, the Hitting Hardwood newsletter. You can find that on social media, posts every Wednesday, or is sent out every Wednesday. And is kind of gives a look back on the week that was, gives a look ahead to the week coming up. We did really we started introducing well, we did it last year, but the player of the week every week for the Minnesota Lynx. We also do our league power rankings, which drop every Monday, but they are part of the newsletter every Wednesday. A lot of great stuff on there. If you want to check that out, it's absolutely free. There's nothing you need to do. You can unsubscribe at any time if you would like. You can find that on social media, and you'll get that right in your inbox every Wednesday. You can also go check out our Hitting the Hardwood website. Go on any of our social medias, check out the bios. There's links to our website in there. That is where you'll find information on the podcast. You'll find information about our newsletter, our Patreon community, which you can visit at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. That's where you'll get a lot of exclusive content that you won't get anywhere else. You'll get podcasts before anybody else. You'll get power rankings before anybody else. You get kind of a lot of exclusive stuff that no one else can get. So all of that stuff you can check out on our website. You can also check out our Hitting the Hardwood store, which is included on the website as well. Get a lot of great merchandise to support Hitting the Hardwood and help support this thing I really enjoy doing. So please go check all of that out. I also want to, as I do every week, give a shout out to Jeremy Rushing for producing our podcast. Does a great job in the back end producing this podcast every other week for you guys. So I appreciate everything that Jeremy does for Hitting the Hardwood. And once again, our podcast sponsors, or Hitting the Hardwood sponsors rather, and partners, they've been with us since day one. I really appreciate everything that they do. Homage and Better Edge. Homage is a vintage clothing store. You can go check them out at homage.com. You get a lot of WNBA gear, general WNBA gear, logo, team gear, and anything you really want. They have vintage stuff, they have throwback stuff, they have any other sport you want, and that obviously includes the WNBA, as I mentioned. So please go check them out. BetterEdge.com, BETTOR Edge.com. My good friends at Better Edge, they're awesome. It's one of my favorite betting platforms that I use. I use it quite regularly, not only during the WNBA season, but year-round with other sports. You can bet against other people. You can bet by yourself. You can do competitions. You can do really anything. Pick'ems. You can do just about anything on that platform. And if you're a first-time user, go to betteredge.com/links. Use the promo code LYNX, LYNX, and you'll get if you're a first-time user, you get free $20 in free play. So if that convinces you enough, please go check them out. BETTOR edge.com, betteredge.com. With that said, we are, even though the Olympic break is here, we'll continue on our regular schedule of every other week. As I mentioned, I appreciate you guys bearing with us over the 4th of July holiday here in the United States. And kind of the delay of this podcast getting to you, it just didn't work out well, or didn't work out timing-wise to do it over the holiday, and so we just pushed it back one more week. But from here on out, we'll do it every other week, as we have all season long, regardless of the Olympic break. So I'm excited to have the next podcast guest here coming up in a couple weeks. And then by that time, we'll be underway with the Olympics. And we'll be kind of looking ahead to the second half of the year, or kind of the last stretch of the regular season before that begins. So thanks again, once again, thank you for listening to Hitting the Hardwood, and I will talk to you guys next week.